The last book ended with Katrina's death. Poor Katrina, she was only introduced as a character so she could be killed. She deserved better.
Argo Font Book Review, Argo Font Book Review.
The police question Jonathan, who may or may not be a vampire. Once the police are gone, Jonathan agonizes, because he knows he should leave town forever, but he can't stand to leave Jessica behind. Jessica returns, and they make out again. It's so passionate and intense, she thinks that Jonathan has turned into a raven and carried her to a field of wildflowers. She shrugs off Jonathan's Birdman powers and keeps on making out with him. Is she on drugs? Because that is not normal. If somebody turned into a bird when I kissed them, I would stop kissing immediately. Mom and Dad decide the girls are grounded for breaking curfew. They are not allowed to leave the house for the next 2 weeks. Jessica asks if this means they can have a pool party. Does she know what grounded means? I don't think she does. Dad forbids the girls from seeing Jonathan again. Jessica overreacts, and she convinces her parents to let Jonathan come over for dinner. That way, they can see he's a nice, normal guy. Definitely not a serial killer/vampire. Dad gives Jessica his credit card so she can go on a shopping trip and buy a new outfit for the dinner date. Oh, Dad has no idea what grounded means either. At dinner, Elizabeth asks questions about Jonathan's family. That seems totally normal to me, but Mom and Dad think Elizabeth is totally crossing the line here, and they tell her to back off with the interrogation. I guess Mom and Dad aren't interested in learning why Jonathan's parents abandoned him in a broken-down mansion for a month with no food or money. The girls talk to their boyfriends after dinner. Jessica and Jonathan talk about how they have so much in common, and just as he's about to confess his big secret, they get interrupted. Elizabeth and Joey talk about her getting grounded, and he makes a discouraging remark about how she's a boring high schooler, not a cool college student like him. Oh, he is so getting dumped now. Elizabeth realizes she doesn't like him as much as she used to. She gets closer to her old boyfriend Todd at Katrina's funeral, because the death makes them realize life is too short to have fake breakup drama all the time. Enid stays by Katrina's grave long after everyone else has left. She talks to Katrina for hours, and she brags about how great it was to go to school with a hickey. Weird thing to tell a dead person there, Enid. The young man serial killer arrives at this point and starts choking her. He doesn't kill her, presumably because she's one of the main characters of the series, and the detective and me totally overanalyze this scene. It doesn't fit, right? The culprit switches from killing people to knocking them out, and he switches from draining their blood to strangulation. That's a fairly large change in the killer's MO. Maybe we have a different culprit? Sadly, nobody else notices these things, and they never get explained. The serial killer just decides not to kill Enid for whatever reason. Jonathan finds Enid half dead. He takes her to the hospital, where she has a dream of the time Jonathan was a small boy in rural Europe. A rich woman tried to kill him by pushing him into a pit. This never gets mentioned again. Enid momentarily comes out of her coma long enough to say the word Jonathan. This convinces Elizabeth that Jonathan is the killer. In a scene which is reused from the Werewolf trilogy, Elizabeth breaks into the manor and finds a sliding bookcase, leading to a hidden collection of vampire books. Elizabeth looks up vampires on the internet. Did you know there are almost 1,000 websites about vampires? So many! Elizabeth gathers as much evidence as possible, and she gets laughed out of the police station. Jonathan takes Jessica to his secret hideout, a cave on the beach. Once again, he tries to confess his big secret, but he gets interrupted. The police kick the teenagers out of the area, 'cause the police have identified this cave as the killer's hideout. It's dangerous! Jessica momentarily wonders why Jonathan and the killer have the exact same secret hideout, but then he winks at her, and she forgets everything in the world, besides for how handsome he is. Jessica isn't very smart in this book. Mom and Dad ground Jessica, and they forbid her from seeing Jonathan ever again. For real this time. She rages against them. Nobody can keep her and Jonathan apart because their love is too strong. So she and Jonathan cut class together the next day, they make out at the cave, and she decides to run away with him forever. While all of this happens, the high schoolers have a meeting about the serial killer. Elizabeth goes over all the circumstantial evidence which proves Jonathan is a vampire. 1. Jonathan showed up right when the murderer did. 2. There were similar murders in 1938 at a high school attended by a John Kane. 3. There are no photographs of Jonathan. He doesn't appear on film. 4. Jonathan never eats food, which is a vampire thing I've never heard of before. 5. He is good at basketball. 6. He and the killer have the same secret hideout. That last piece of evidence is the most convincing one. Maybe you should have put that at the top of the list. Or at least put it before he's good at basketball, therefore he's a vampire. Everyone is convinced by Elizabeth's proof, and before you know it, there's a mob of angry teenagers marching to kill the vampire. But then, Enid wakes up from her coma and reveals that Jonathan brought her to the hospital. Elizabeth realizes, maybe he's not a vampire after all. She calls Joey for help, and he breaks up with her. In what I call convenient timing, Todd appears and tells Elizabeth he wants to date her again. Jonathan takes Jessica to his house, where he discovers missing vampire books. He realizes the place isn't safe for him anymore, and he has to leave town right away. Jessica promises to never leave him. He gives her a ring, saying it's a magic ring, which prevents sunlight from destroying him, and wait, what? He's really a vampire? 5 pages before the trilogy ends, you decide he was a vampire the whole time? Then why did you just spend 400 pages pretending he wasn't a vampire, Sweet Valley? What are you doing? Ow! Anyway, even though there's an angry mob on the way, Jessica and Jonathan start making out, because basically that's the only thing they ever do. Jessica becomes drunk on Jonathan's love to the point where she can't do anything else besides lie on the ground and smile. Elizabeth comes to save Jessica before the angry mob arrives. Jonathan is impressed by how much Elizabeth loves Jessica, and he realizes he can't interfere with such strong family love. So he goes away without making Jessica a vampire. And that's it. Jonathan runs away and nobody sees him again. He turns into a bird so he can stare at Enid and take his ring back from Jessica. Jessica goes back to normal and realizes it was incredibly stupid of her to give up everything for the sake of a hot guy. I'm sure she'll forget this lesson by the time the next hot guy appears. The end. Post-book follow-up. I've had 2 days to absorb this book, and I still can't get over the ending, where the author decides vampires are real now, deal with it. The trilogy was clearly setting up for a fake-out ending where Jonathan isn't a vampire and the serial killer is someone else. That's what happened in the werewolf storyline, and that's 100% what I was expecting here. Why else would the books be so deliberately vague about Jonathan and the serial killer? What's the point of stringing out the vampire question until the very end of the last book, only to leave things entirely unexplained? Imagine how different it would have been if he was a vampire the whole time, not a fake vampire 99% of the time. We could have heard his actual backstory instead of vague tidbits. There is a lot that goes unexplained, like how he became a vampire, why he's here in Sweet Valley, why did he immediately fall in love with Jessica before he even talked to her, why is Elizabeth immune to his vampire charms, how has he gotten away with killing people for hundreds of years, why did he choke Enid instead of draining her blood, why did he stop trying to kill Enid, then take her to the hospital, why doesn't Enid remember that Jonathan's the one who tried to kill her, why does kissing him leave Jessica and Enid in a drug-induced state? Why aren't fangs ever mentioned? Why does he decide to make Jessica a vampire without ever telling her he's a vampire? Why didn't he join the basketball team if he's so good at basketball? Am I overanalyzing this? Yes, I am. Sorry, but if you're gonna have real vampires, don't do it half-heartedly. And vampires don't come up until 100 pages into the final book is pretty half-hearted. As for the rest of the book, it was not good. Elizabeth's love drama continues to be uninspired. All she does is cry and wait for the boys to make all the decisions. Lucky for her, the boys decide to do exactly what she wants. Jessica was ridiculously overboard here, even for her. Enid was more or less dropped from the story. She stops fighting for Jonathan, and her feud with Elizabeth is resolved while she's unconscious. Overall, I suppose it's an adequate ending to the trilogy, but I am too unhappy with the ending of vampires are real, but we're not going to explain anything. That ending basically ruined the trilogy for me. I'm sure the trilogy would seem different now if I reread it, knowing Jonathan's a real vampire the whole time, but I have no desire to read more of whiny vampire love. I give Sweet Valley High number 128, Kiss of a Killer, a 1 out of 10.